Welcome to This Commerce Life. We are an unscripted podcast dedicated to small businesses and entrepreneurs in the retail and consumer packaged goods space in Canada and the United States.
I am Phil Chang, co-host and co-founder.
And I'm Kenny Vanucci, co-host and co-founder of This Commerce Life.
Our love is the journey to retail, and our passion is sharing that with you every week. Cheryl.
Unlike the daylight savings hit you guys too.
I hate it.
Gosh.
Yeah, I just don't like it.
It's just gone. Yeah, I don't know. It's so fast. I'm ready for a break, but I'm really not ready. You know what I mean? So
yeah. The year just raced by, and I think whenever we hit this time of year with fall, you just realize it's moving even faster right now.
I think that's what it is, right? Because you start doing, I think, oh my God, it's fall. Pretty soon it's gonna be New Year's, like Christmas, New Year's. And you just run ahead, and you're thinking, holy moly, man!
Yeah,
just motoring.
I would say I'm never sure when the downtime is in CPG, because as soon as you hit the fall, it's just run, and then we've got New Year, New You, and it just keeps going. So that's why I said, yeah, it feels like everything's in fast forward right now.
I think you're right. I don't think there's really any time where there's breaks, because even when, let's say, the retail side slows down, that means we're all doing other things on the back end side, right?
Yeah.
And then when the back end slows down, retail's up. You think, what the hell, man?
Yeah, I know. I'm always like, where's the 1 month where it's quieter? And they're like, well, it's like not summer because you're planning and working on fall, and then working on all the 2024 planners and still finalizing that with groups, and into already approving everything for January. So yeah, it just feels like things are moving fast right now.
Yeah, I find the same. I really do.
Silliness, all of it.
Just crazy.
Like, when's our week in the sunshine? It doesn't ever come.
It doesn't. Maybe January, February. We'll just make a week.
Yeah.
Head south.
Yeah. It would be nice.
We are victim of our own success too. So it's not like if we made ourselves a week, do you actually think that we would do that? Like, we would take some time off? I don't think so. I think the first time we would go, hey, cool, we got a week off. And then I think what would happen right after is that we go, if I just didn't take all of it off, maybe I could do something else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
think that's one of the challenges for everyone, is that we're so programmed to keep going. And, I remember years ago when I started Vitality, I read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's like schedule time off and sharpen the saw. And that's something that I didn't follow and regret and still struggle to this day, that, taking time off is sort of those recharge moments, and you need them in life. Otherwise you really do grind yourself down, and because the schedules don't stop, you know what I mean? So yeah, trying to plan for a week, try to unplug, it's very challenging, I think, for anyone running a business, anyone involved in consumer packaged goods, and I think that's actually one of the top challenges, is trying to find that time and then stick to that time. I can't remember a vacation where I haven't been accessible by phone. So you're getting text messages, emails, so forth about the business. So it is very hard to detach and recharge. And I think that's a big thing that I think needs to be a focus for a lot of people. And I've said this many times, especially with the retailers. It's like the people that were working, especially during COVID, we were working, because you're trying to cover everything off. So I think there's also this additional, for a lot of people, kind of carrying of multiple years of not getting enough recharge time. So yeah, when you kind of spin into the time change this last week, it's kind of like, okay, keep pushing, but yeah, it's a good idea to find that time, to schedule the time and actually take that time.
I don't know how it works anymore. I remember I think my first smartphone I got was in 2009. I remember because we were going to Europe. So I had an iPhone 3, right? So that meant you were definitively connected. And probably for the 10 years prior to that, I think I brought a laptop on every single holiday
Yeah.
that we ever did. But I don't know. I don't know if you can go back. It was hard enough then when we didn't have as many touch points. Like, can you go anywhere without the phone for a day or two? Like without the accessibility to internet, et cetera. Do you know what I mean? So at that point,
Yeah.
once you're on, it's hard. It's like in the old days, you didn't have it. So when you went away, they couldn't get a hold of you. Why? I didn't have the technology to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? I was gone. That was it. I'm in Italy. I
Yeah,
have no
well,
phone.
exactly.
wait.
Yeah, no, that definitely is part of the past. Like I remember 2001 was probably, I just started into the working world and I went to Mexico. I remember there's no way to reach you on that 1 week. It was very refreshing. And then, fast forward a couple of years, I'm working for a major tech company. And I remember going on a 2-week vacation to Europe, like you're just talking about Italy, which kind of sparked the memory back. And my director at the time was like, make sure your, it was BlackBerry back then, make sure your BlackBerry's on. Like
Yeah.
But that's just it, right? And that's phone technology.
Now that's just become the norm. Like, and that's, hopefully there's a reset at some point on that. But yeah, it's
I hope so.
And yeah.
But Cheryl,
Yeah.
I don't know, right? Because even now, like if people go on holidays and the first thing you do, or not first thing, but if you do see them, let's say on Instagram or Facebook or something posting, well, they're on their phone.
Yeah.
Right. And then what's
Well,
the first thing, then everybody thinks, well, they're accessible. They're doing something. And you're thinking, I get it, but that's not the purpose of it. That was not a work thing. It was, I'm resting thing, sort of.
Yeah. The other thing is too, I think before or with vacations, like when you went on a vacation, like not only your own lack of accessibility, but the people around you, like it
Everything.
seems so rare now to just be in an airport where like people aren't yelling about a deadline or something of that nature. And you're like, wow, you're bringing it with you. And then, and then there was, you're sitting around a poolside. You're like, okay, finally I get a vacation and everyone's on their smartphones. Like there's not even an awareness anymore that they're like on like full blast. Like they don't, you know what I mean? Like you're hearing both sides of the conversation. Like, wow, I'm really just trying to decompress here. So
exactly.
Yeah,
I
do notice. Yeah, and that's the other thing. I find that stressful too. And I used to say to people, I love getting on a plane during work trips, like going Vancouver to Toronto or so forth, because it's like you're unplugged for 4 hours. You just like go through
not
all
anymore.
the emails, and now it's like, now it's like Wi-Fi availability while you're on the plane. I'm like, no.
And high speed, like good Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you could do like your phone conferences on the plane. So
seriously.
Yeah, no, I mean it's you really are now in the digital age touches everyone.
Yeah.
Same thing with even like vacationing when you have kids even around you, like they're on their phones, like the WhatsApp group chats are going off with family members, like, hey, like how about this or this, and you're like, oh wow, like
we're out by the pool, or where are you? I'm here. Let's meet there.
What are we doing for dinner? Oh, how about check this place out? And then everybody's looking for restaurants. You're thinking, holy shit, guys! What did 10 years ago? You know what we did? You just walked or you asked somebody, where do you eat?
Walked around. So it's kind of funny. Like I always say, like it's kind of the Gen X lifestyle experience, because we are that group that remembers life without technology. And that's why I said I kind of caught the edge of it there, like going on vacation without it. And then now it's like it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. And there's, this this blurring that, like I say, especially when you're running a company or like you're in a key part of it. And even like younger people, they feel that pressure to be checking in. And so, it's, it really does. And it's very hard to unplug from everything, whether it's coming at you from your phone or computers, and
whatever
that feel that you have to bring it with you wherever you go. So I think that's going to be a big challenge point for people with the years to come, because you can't always be plugged in.
I don't think you have to be. And I think, like you said before, the challenge is too, is if let's say I don't bring my phone, but Phil does, and he's on his phone. Well, then now I'm stressed out, because I'm thinking, fuck, maybe I should have had my phone too.
Yeah.
Like what's he doing that's so important? Maybe I got to get shit done. Like, and I'm there thinking, oh my God, I should have brought my phone. Like you just get angst on angst.
Yeah. But I don't, like, I think you're right. But somewhere along the way, we've got to figure out how to this is like, in a way, I liken it like junk food eating, right? It's like, when
Or
it's like having potato chips or smoking, right? It's like we've got to find a way just to, because there are things that I do that I want to take with me. Like I would not trade my phone in connectivity, right? Because like, for example, I don't buy real books anymore. I buy them all on Kindle, right? Or an ebook format, right? Because I'm going to read it once, and then what am I going to do with it, right? Like, I'm past I need to own it. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if I buy a book and I read it once, now what happens to it, right? It's in my library, or I recycle it and it goes in a landfill somewhere. Like, so I don't mind being connected. I just have to figure out how to turn off the work part of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like being able to have the self-control to flip off the sync switch on your Gmail, like your work Gmail, before you go or whatever it is. So I think
The problem is
stuff,
do we
Yeah.
actually do it? I
I
think
don't
that's the thing. You go into the intention
Yeah.
with it. It's actually my sister-in-law is actually one of my good friends before she met and married my brother. But we went on a vacation, and she's a teacher, and she always says to me, like, you need to learn to disconnect and just stay present, in a sense. Like, don't worry about what's going on. And I remember we went on a vacation. She said, I swear, if you pick up your phone, I'm gonna throw it in the water. Like, I'll walk down the beach, throw it in the water. So it's very hard, that self-control. But I will say that she is one of the people in my lifetime who has actually managed to keep me like present in that moment, and just with the humor and the thread. And even at the airport when we checked in, I like went to pick up my emails, and she's like, again, I still can find water if it's even in a glass here. So
It's
it's finding that balance, and I think it's really hard.
But I think that's the job too, though, Cheryl. I've got a lot of friends who are teachers too, right? And the difference is their worlds are different. The weekends are different. The amount of time off is different. If there's no kids in front of them, administration's not bugging them at 6 o'clock or 8. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. And it's a lot easier, I think, in some professions to find that balance. Not that they're overworked or underworked. I don't give a shit about that. It's not what we're talking about. The bottom line, no 6-year-old or 10-year-olds texting them at 8 o'clock at night asking where something is, for the most part. So you can have a different turnoff.
Yeah, it is and that is really comes back to the type of work you do. And I learned that and probably one of the worst days of my life was I was working in a major corporation. At the time, it was before my brother and I started Vitality together, and took on a completely different lifestyle and a different value. But my dad had passed away on a Sunday, and on Monday our budgets were due, and so I texted my director at the time and let them know what had occurred, and that I would have to be offline. And I got a message back, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but your budget is still due today. And that's,
come on, buddy. I mean, get your head out of here.
And I'm like, I was in a team at the time, and I was like, this, and I was really like, it was taken aback. And I remember just thinking, I can't believe this is an expectation on me. This is the worst day of my life. And I find that is something that I carried with me as well. Like, when working with people, like saying to them, like, if there's something going on in your life, like, that's what your team is here to support you. Like, and very important is, like, we kind of joke about taking the time off or sharpening the saw, but the longer I've been going along this road, like, I'm, now in my mid 40s, is, that energy that you had in your 20s, like that starts to dissipate, and you're also taking on bigger decision making, and you do need to unplug. And when something happens in someone's life, you have to realize, like, this is a critical point for them. Like, can we not manage this as a team, or so I think it's also that, like, just having that honesty with people, which I didn't have that mechanism in my life at that time. I just remember thinking, like, I can't believe I'm doing this, versus now, if someone told me, like, a member of my family was sick or something, like, I'm going to unplug. But I also have to remind myself of that. And I've heard other entrepreneurs and business leaders and so forth talking about it, is you also have to apply that same care to yourself, because and that's kind of the thing is, you know, what's the long-term impact on our personal health, our personal sanity, you know, the relationships around us. And I think as well with COVID, like that all got very blurred as well. Like as a,
Totally.
you know, an essential services like Vitality's vitamins and supplements, we were told, you know, you're essential services. So we're still plowing forward. I'm dealing with changing, you know, protocols in every single province, like every store, every, you know, every distributor is different. Like it was very exhausting. And I found myself at the end of that, like, you know, pushing through like day in, day out the week, plus waking up in the middle of the night thinking like, oh my God, what if like this happens? What if that happens? And you do find yourself like, yeah, you're worn down. And so it becomes even more important to say to yourself, you know, rest is productive, and then trying to find ways, whether it's, you know, changing up the people around you who are better at managing that, or telling yourself you need to disconnect and like tell people like, I trust you to make those decisions without me. Like, and I try and say that to people a lot now, like, I trust you to do your best. And if it doesn't work, then we'll deal with it when I'm back. But I do need to, you know, log out or take that time as well.
So much easier said than done, though, eh?
So hard. And honestly,
You know?
it gives you like anxiety almost to say I'm unplugging for a couple of hours, let alone a couple of days.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's kind of crazy, but that's like, it's just, you know, the reality of everything, because everything is so immediate. Like everyone wants it now, and it's very challenging when
It is
you
very
deal
challenging.
with that.
And it's always the same thing. And different mediums, they text you and they think, well, you should text back right away. You're thinking, I don't really give a shit about your text right now.
Yeah.
I can do it. Yes, I'm right here, but I'm not interested right at this moment.
It's funny. I leave my phone at home from time to time, and my like the younger staff, they're like, "Oh my God, I'd have a heart attack taking the phone."
Actually, I kind of find it liberating. I've done it
I
too.
do
I've
too.
forgotten. We go to a restaurant. I've forgotten it.
Are we going to keep talking about leaving our phone somewhere that I'm not? Because I think I have to hang up. I'll have anxiety. I don't think I can do it.
I like it. If I've gone out and forgotten it, I'm thinking it's this very, very nice feeling. I don't really care, and I would be on it.
I'm troubled now. You're my partner. Like I find you everywhere you go. Like how can you leave your phone at home? How am I going to find you, man?
You know what?
Oh my God, I'm so anxious.
Somewhere. No worries.
Like, come on, man.
No
it's
worries.
actually kind of interesting because it's kind of this, you know, speaking of like commerce life or retail or changing time frames, it's really around the whole, like, you know, there's a guy on Instagram, Champagne Cruz, I like think he's hilarious. He's actually a Gen Z, but he has nailed like the different generations at work, and like the fact that a Gen Z like has to have their phone literally in hand. And I watched this, it's like on the desk, it can be very distracting. The millennials, same thing, need to be connected. Like the Gen X, I'm part of that. It's like you're okay with it, you need to be connected, but you're also okay to unplug. And then there's the next level, which is that boomer generation, and they don't need to at all. And it makes me laugh because I go for walks and I don't bring my phone with me, or go for, you know, and people are like, why don't you have your phone with you? And it's like, because I'm out relaxing. But that expectation, and it's funny because my mom, I sometimes get panicked. I'm like, I can't get a hold of you. Like, why don't you have your cell phone on? And she said to me, my phone is for me when I want to call you, not for when you people want to find me. You know,
there's logic
like,
to
your
that.
boss. I love
that's
that.
what the phone is to her.
You're
It's like,
right.
and you know, it's just funny to me. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing where, you know, we are talking about how to manage ourselves, and you also have to manage yourself around different age groups and expectations. So
Totally.
it's an interesting time with technology. Like I just feel like you're always, you know, you just feel like you almost always have to be connected, and that includes into the office. Even like as a running a company, like even all of our, they're calling my phone, even if I'm on vacation, I have to pick up, and I feel that. And I will say to them like, oh, you know, they're like, oh, you're out of the office. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually on vacation. They're like, oh, why'd you pick up? And it's like, well, I saw your name, and it's like just goes right into the business, right? So, and they're like, you know, you should really enjoy your vacation.
You can really enjoy vacation. Well, and by the way, the reason I phoned you.
Then that's exactly it, because they're on a time crunch, right?
Like, exactly. So all the nice talk goes right out the window because, oh my God, we shouldn't be bothering you. So, but now that we have you on the phone, here's the 30 things I need to ask you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's hard to manage because it comes from all levels. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's why if you go back to that self-discipline of shutting it off, it then you worry about the impact it has on the other person or their business or whatever that looks like. So yeah, definitely one of the challenges. Social media too, like the ongoing like need to post on all those platforms. It's a business within itself, like trying to manage all of that. So yeah, I find that, like I said, to be one of my struggle points with the business is always trying to manage all the volume and level of communication now, and trying to find balance for myself, which I have not achieved. I would love to know the person who has, but yeah, that's everyone's like, why aren't you on TikTok, or you should post more on LinkedIn, or what are you doing with this platform? And you're like, oh my God, I'm just trying to get through my emails and my calls, you know. So it adds to the whole how to manage time.
It just all adds up. So I think we're at a record now. I don't think we've ever gone 21 or 22 and not told anybody who we're talking to or why we're talking to them. This is like we're
on the
typically
show
bad.
a couple weeks ago.
You are like the world. You are now, after 300, almost 50 episodes, you are the record holder.
Yeah,
21 minutes.
Yeah.
Before we introduce Cheryl Grant from Vitality Supplements onto the program so that she can talk about something else other than just the lack of time we get off when we travel.
But we did so if you guys didn't hear it, like Cheryl was on the podcast not long ago.
Weeks ago.
But she had some pretty critical messages around Save Your Supplements, Save Our Supplements, the SOS kind of initiative that we really wanted to get out. But Kenny and I asked her to come back because
we never talked about
we didn't really accomplish any of the rest of what we wanted to do, which was to actually talk to Cheryl and find out about her and Vitality. So you've heard little snippets of it already, but we clearly wanted more because we clicked almost. I feel like we clicked almost right away, and then we jumped right into Save Our Supplements. We actually didn't mean to, but we did, and it was kind of an important message. But at the same time, we felt like you, the listener,
we got robbed from really knowing anything about Cheryl.
You didn't get enough of Cheryl, really. So we brought Cheryl back and
did the same thing again. So in this episode, after 25 minutes, we still know nothing of what Cheryl does.
I try to remain to be a mystery for everyone.
Well, apparently you're doing a damn good job. An hour and a half now in, and nobody knows what the hell you do. Great. Good job, Phil.
Yeah, I know. It's because Phil and I always distract each other at the top of these, and then we jump right into things.
It is true. And then, like, I smell conspiracy theory because last time on the podcast, Cheryl said that whatever she looked like last time, she was going to change her appearance almost every time. And now she's just on a phone call. So I don't know if she's in the midst
where she is,
of
what she's doing, nothing.
Camouflaging who she is. So the next time I see it, the first time I see her in person, I really won't recognize her at all. So.
You won't even know what I do to find me.
I know. I won't know what you do. I don't know anything about you. I won't even recognize you. It's horrible. Like, this is.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was great chatting with you guys. I know a lot of people in the industry when we talk. I've said this a lot. I've started to get to know a lot of people outside who I have really spent a lot of time with through Save Our Supplements, which we talked in depth about last time. And, and the reason that I've obviously gotten very involved in that is, who I am is the fact that I am the president of Vitality Vitamins and Supplements. So we're a local BC-based line of vitamins and supplements that started 10 years ago this month, actually.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, I should say, my brother and I revitalized the name and brought products into the marketplace. And, so we're really on that journey of building a consumer packaged goods brand that really is intended to help support and change people's health. So that's really focus has been over the last couple of years. I talked about sort of that life-changing experience of losing my dad and what that was like even in business, but that was really what was a turn point in my life and for my whole of my family. And it kind of led me onto this path of really working on supporting people's health. And that's today.
That's very
amazing.
cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
That's very cool.
You talked a little bit about it, throughout this thing. So one, congratulations. You're 10 years old. We, Kenny and I actually, the podcast turns 6 this month.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit behind you. But yeah, definitely, kind of cool.
It is
November.
very cool.
Yeah.
Seems like anything over a year now is like a big accomplishment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I remember when I first started into building like the business plan for Vitality is like most CPG companies go in after 2 years, so they go down. And so when you're fighting through, and I've met so many people along the way who've started a business and, how you just realize, the struggles at the beginning, you come in with this great energy and enthusiasm, and there's just lots of hurdles along the way. So congratulations on 6 years. And
Thank you.
like I said, one
Thank you.
who's continuing to build their business and connect with people years into it, I think is a huge accomplishment.
Thanks. We want to talk about Vitality though, and we want to talk about you. So you talked a little bit about like corporate life. Do you mind going backwards a little bit? Maybe give us a little bit of like where you come from, and then I'm super curious about because Kenny and I spend a lot of time on talking to families and family businesses. So I want to ask you about kind of the mindset of coming back in and jumpstarting Vitality, but maybe rewind a little and tell us a little bit about corporate life, what that was like before.
Sure. So for me, like I grew up in Vancouver, and this is really where my family has been. So always been based in BC. I've many opportunities to go to the east, but I really love Vancouver. This is, where I'm meant to be. And so I graduated from university here at UBC, and I actually did a Bachelor of Arts. I did a double major in English literature, communications, and urban planning. So really outside of what was my future life. And then I, from there continued forward on both those paths and really did a lot of work around broadcast journalism at BCIT and continued into the urban planning at the master's level at UBC. And actually, I always say I have a business degree informally because my dad, who's obviously a major influence on me, was in marketing as well as president in large CPG firms. And so I always had this sort of informal, always discussion around business around me. And so it's funny, a friend said to me, you should really be in marketing. And so I started into the advertising world. I remember my first job was at a promotions and marketing advertising company. And they interviewed me, and the first thing I said to them at the end of the interview was like, so what's my competition look like? And they're like, you're the only person without a commerce degree. So I laughed and I said, well, thanks for the opportunity. I won't be hearing from you. And so anyways, they called me a couple of days later and they're like, yeah, we really think you could bring something here, and we're excited to bring you on board. So my first clients I worked for in advertising was actually some pretty small groups known like Procter and Gamble and Coca-Cola.
Oh, just those guys.
Just
literally
little guys. Yeah,
just little
Start
programs.
small.
Yeah.
Start small.
Too bad those guys never became anything, or
They had a good chance. They had some stuff there, but just couldn't put it together.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to try and look them up and see what happened to them. But yeah, so I was involved in launching a new product for Procter and Gamble, and taking on various events and things of that nature. And it really excited me, and I really enjoyed it. I loved it. And I kind of continued on that path of advertising and marketing. And then I kind of pivoted a bit a few years into my career and went into the marketing at Canadian Diabetes Association. I had a real passion around health, and they had a new initiative called Team Diabetes, which was raising funds for diabetes prevention and awareness. And so I actually took on managing that program for the Pacific, which was BC and the Yukon territories. And I started working with media partnerships, contacting various media outlets, and we started building teams of 25, 50, 120 people to basically train for marathons and fly them internationally in support of diabetes. And someone asked me, have you done it yet? No. So I always believe in putting yourself into whatever business you're doing. And I, trained and did a marathon myself and raised $8,000 for diabetes research. And so, I did that. And through that experience, I was actually then moved into my next position, which was actually at a Best Buy Canada. And you never really know where your journey is leading you. But from all the media work that I was doing, and I was doing, radio and television and all of the press releases, led me into my next chapter, which was at Best Buy. And so I worked with them on two areas. The first was on public relations. And then while I was there, I had a very unique vice president, Sue Voigt, who is one of the greatest mentors I could have had. She said to me, Cheryl, I just feel like you have so much more in you. And she encouraged me to put forward what was called innovation funds to develop a whole new area within the business around corporate responsibility and corporate giving. So I had a very unique opportunity. And actually, a lot of people thought that wouldn't move forward because that was when the economic crisis hit in 2008, 2009. But they valued the idea of where we were headed. And so that led my journey for a couple more years until I went over to TELUS, and I worked there as well. And also in the, marketing. Everyone always like, oh, the little animals running around. I'm like, well, yeah, that's part of it. So had an amazing experience working with the team there. And then that's when I say like some lifestyles impacted us. And that's what really led to, me shifting my position. And, I was sitting at my desk one day and I thought, I've always questioned if I'll run a business or be an entrepreneur. And my brother and I had been talking about, the natural health space and vitality and so forth. And so kind of took a plunge. And so Doug and I came together and, we took what was the name of Vitality. We took formulations, we built formulations, and then we launched the product line into the marketplace. And that was a huge challenge. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. But yeah, we came in as Vitality vitamins and supplements into the BC marketplace, like I say, 10 years ago today. So that's really my journey through my career. Many times I questioned, where am I going? So it always is funny when it comes together. You go, wow, okay, all those pieces came together and they were needed for me to get here.
Just find it interesting though. You get one person telling you that you're probably, you could do more and more entrepreneurial, but that's because you hadn't it to that point. I mean, you might have been doing entrepreneurial type things within large corporations, but it's all corporate.
Yeah, it was very corporate.
You know what I mean? So like, where does it come from then?
Like, you mean where did?
Because typically what happens, I mean, it doesn't have to hold.
You mean why someone would make the observation that she should be doing something more entrepreneurial?
And then why do you take advantage of it? Because at the end of the day, when you're in corporate, it's corporate. It's, you know what I mean? People typically stay in those places because it's very defined or it's very structured, very secure, whatever the thing is. Entrepreneurialism is completely the freaking opposite. It's sheer chaos.
It is really. And, and I had that. I mean, again, like I said, whether it was at Best Buy or TELUS, like they laid the path for me towards the goalpost of what everyone wants to be, which is to move up the ladder. And I personally had that drive. And the executive around me saw that, and both Best Buy as well as both Best Buy Canada and US offered me opportunities to continue with them. And same thing with TELUS. You know, when I made that decision, again, I had a fantastic vice president at the time, and, you know, said, you know, we'll give you a promotion to you, and we were going to anyways. We want to see you as a leader in the company. So that's why I said the path was kind of there for sure. And it gave me confidence in myself that I can continue to do these. It's very different stepping out from major corporations where you have this structure of teams and money and
Resources, human, money.
endless resources and funding
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
versus stepping into, like, you know, scrappy from the ground, like, you know, bootstrapping, like questioning yourself, building relationships in a whole new industry. You really have to have personal self-preservation because you're going to take more knocks than you're going to get anything else, to be very honest. And it takes a huge emotional toll
Yes.
on a person building a business. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that building a business, the amount of self-doubt, the amount of, you know, the way you feel knocked down at times while you're trying to build forward. The self-doubt is, I think, the biggest one. That if you could, I always say, if I could have taken the boulder of self-doubt off myself, like, where could we have been? But it's not something that you can easily shake. So, you know, that's that trying to be vulnerable to even tell people you're having that, when you're just trying to look like, yeah, everything's great, when it's not. It's very challenging. And yeah, you definitely at times go, why am I doing this? Like, I should go back, like go back, like, you know. But once you've started that path, there's an inner drive. And I think why go from corporate to a startup life is, I would only say there's something that internally drives you, including when you're in a larger corporation. You may have these ideas, but they're not yours to always move forward, or it's not always your vision. It's a cumulative decision. And so sometimes you get very passionate about things and you realize, you know, you're part of that wheel. And versus if you have that drive to try and do something different, it's usually because you really believe there's something more that you can do, or at least that's what I felt like. I really wanted to do something that reflected 100%, or at least in my naive vision, 100% what you wanted to achieve or believe in.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's a valid
But you
answer.
learn too, you're going to be influenced by everyone around you too, like, you know, the distributors, the retailers, the marketing, the, you know, the employees that you hire, like all those things bring a whole other level of pressure and also change. You know, it's the same thing, but in a different format. So it
also
very
reinforces that self-doubt, right, Cheryl? Because at the end of the day, there's 60 opinions. You're thinking, Jesus Christ, which one do I take? Because in corporate, that's probably 60 different departments. So it was spread out over a lot of people and whatever.
Yeah.
You didn't really put your neck on the line more times than not. When you're on your own, it's every decision has repercussions, and guess who owns them all?
Yeah, 100%.
It's also the pressure of people thinking, you know what, you just, why don't you just know, right? Like, isn't this your business? Like, don't you know? And you're kind of going, no, I don't know. Like,
most people don't.
Do I look like I've done this before? Like, no, I haven't, right? Like, it's a funny, it's a funny one.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, I always say to people, corporate structure, you have like very connected relationships with a certain amount of people. So whether they're in your department or external partners, when you're actually running a business around CPG, you know, it's kind of interesting because you have, first of all, you have to build relationships with everything from, you know, contract manufacturers. You have to build relationships with all the suppliers, whether that's ingredients or labels or, you know, whatever that is. And you're making those decisions, like you're driving the idea of what does your brand look like?
Exactly.
You know, what do you stand for? What's your key message? Like, what products do you want to launch? And so you're going through and making all these decisions, and at time going, what if I'm making a mistake? What if I do that wrong? And then you're also on top of it, you're getting, here's the cost for the branding, and here's the cost for the website, and you're just like, it's just overwhelming, and the timelines are coming on top of you. And then you're going to the retailers and you're meeting with them, and you might get one person who goes, wow, I love this. But for that one person, you might have 20 that go,
Yeah.
we already work with all these other brands. Like, we don't need you, and you're going to be quashed within the next 6 months. Like, I literally had people say that to me, like, why would I bother to work with you? It's just, you're another person I have to list. You're another person I have to tend to. And if are you just here to try and like sell something and get out? You know what I mean? So you also face a lot of challenges, and I always say that to people, and they're like, oh wow, like you're in so many stores. I'm like, no, like, no. Like, the first 10 were so hard. And they, like, you hit like 50, you hit 100, like you're pushing so hard. And everyone talks about this, once you get listed, that's just the beginning of the battle. Like, and that's why I said, yeah, you continue to build. You look at how many stores you're in. Say you're in 100 stores for simplicity. You're dealing most of the time with 100 individual buyers. Plus, then now with food's different than supplements, because supplements require a huge amount of education. And retraining and retraining, and people realize that. And I'm like, so you're usually adding at another store level, like most supplement teams are between 2 to 3 minimum, but some of them have 17. So right now, after the pandemic, we've had this huge turnover in staff. So some of our stores that we were doing so well with and had a great engaged team, they're all gone, or the majority are. And that's a challenge for the retailer, but that also becomes a challenge for someone like myself, because now you're back at almost square one, because a lot of the people don't know the products or how to speak or train them or so forth. So that's why I said you're really managing, like, you could be managing like 600 relationships. So it is a lot of work. You're expanding your network beyond and on. And so that becomes a big part of this type of business and supplements, which I would never have understood that 10 years ago. If I step back into my mindset then, I would never have understood the level that required as well.
I don't think you can until you start doing it. I really don't. I don't think people really understand how complicated CPG retail is in this country specifically, but everywhere. It's not an easy game. I mean, I was a buyer for a long time. Phil was a buyer. And to what you said is true. People would come in and be thinking, you think you have the greatest thing since sliced bread. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Just so you know, there's about 400 people behind you wanting to come in.
Yeah.
I don't take you, I take someone else. I make a mistake. Well, I'll get you back later.
Yeah.
Like, really, I mean,
the worst thing you can hear is after you've done all this work is you get an email, like, if you even get an email, like, oh, this product got delisted, or your whole line, who knows? But, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is you're trying to build along the business and they're managing their business, but it's exponentially, adds up every time you add another person, another retailer, or so forth, another product. And so that's why I said it is very challenging. And at the end of the day, the buyers have to have the trust in what you're doing. And so that's why I say it's building a relationship every single time. And, one of the examples people say to me all the time, they're like, oh, I can't believe, like, we're in the Pacific Northwest. We started in Whole Foods. This is a couple of years ago now. And everyone's like, oh, I can't believe you got in. You're so lucky. I'm like, it was like 28 points of contact. And I always said, like, as the previous buyer, he's a good guy, but I said I always felt like it's a one-sided conversation, because it's like, oh, hey, it's me, and this is what's happening, and this is just providing an update. And then one day I got an email. It was like, you're persistent and you're in. And I was like, oh my God, like, I thought it was just an out of office. I'm like, I don't even remember sending an email. So it is that constant work and self-doubt. Like, you have to, every time you pick up the phone, every time you go and meet with someone, is saying, I'm adding value, and you have to, like, rev yourself up to make sure you're delivering the best for the partners you work with, the retailers, the customers at the end of the day who are taking your product. And that's really where I keep my mindset in, is We started this to benefit the health of people, our family, our friends, customers we've never met, but we could help them. And so even when you're having those really down days, and if my brother Doug was here, that's when people say to him, what motivates you? What keeps you going? He's like, sometimes you just like really questioning yourself, and you get a testimonial from someone who says like, your relaxed product helped my child not have to go on to medication, or I don't have to go for blood transfusions anymore because your Power Iron completely changed my life. And you can feel very validated at the work that you've been doing, but it doesn't change the fact how challenging it can be, for sure.
Yeah, again, I just don't think people really appreciate the toughness of it. And it's like you sort of said before, like, again, people don't understand this too. And what people who get into without thinking, getting the PO, like you said, getting the listing can be very complicated and time consuming. Getting the POs is not the hardest part of the deal, though. It's now got to leave a shelf. It's got to get into consumers' home, and they got to want it and repeat.
Yeah.
So the game doesn't stop once you get the listing. If anything, that's just when it starts.
Yeah.
Right? Because you still got to move this stuff.
It's like you just got the flag to start running down the field. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. And you're thinking, I'm exhausted. I've been running forever.
And that's the thing, is most people have used up all the gas before they've got the go.
Exactly.
And it's like, no, you're just starting. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you've got. Like, although money is extremely helpful, but you're just starting. It makes a huge difference. And that's actually a huge challenge of CPG, is people don't. It's very challenging to get funding to support the growth of companies, yet everyone thinks once you're listed, there's just this exponential growth. And it's like, oh, that's not the, there's listings costs, there's the promotions costs, there's education costs, there's staff costs, like holding inventory is very costly. So, as a business, as a president of a company, like running a company, you learn every single aspect of the business. And you were talking about Phil, family business, like working with family. I honestly don't think I could be on the phone with you on this podcast, talking with people, talking about vitality at this point, if it wasn't for the fact that I was actually with my brother. I honestly think that trying to run a business is probably one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging thing to do, to find a business partner that's aligned with you, like fights with you, fights against you, but still comes back to you. Like, very few people can do that. And, my brother and I have really, our relationship has evolved in so many different ways. And at the end of the day, even if we're fighting and arguing and trying to get through it, it's like, we know each other still has each other's backs. And I remember we were having a horrible argument once and about something, and everything just felt like it was going sideways a couple of years ago. And ironically, it was around Christmas, and it was just like this blow up of a conversation. My brother stormed out of the room, and then he comes back and he opens up the door and he's like, "So we'll see you at 4:00 for Christmas dinner." And like the two of us just burst into laughter, because it was like, at the end of the day, we're still family. Like, we're still
family,
there, And then when they say like the majority of businesses start as families, or, it's probably for the fact that it's very challenging to do it on your own. And it's really challenging to do it with someone that you can't come back to. And I know it probably also destroys a lot of relationships. But, like I said, I don't think we'd be where we are. My brother and I both have very different skill sets. Doug's, his background is actually finance, working in accounting, financial management. So he brings a whole level that I could not even begin to touch on. And knowing that he has that is really allows me to have confidence to go into where I have. And so you have to build a lot of trust in each other, and then know you've got each other's backs along the way.
I have a funny story for you. I think you'll appreciate it. A long time ago, I was a key account on a business for Walmart, and one of the field sales managers came in and had all these questions for me. What's listed here, what's listed there. We talked through the differences of, like what's it like to work for a franchise versus like a head office account like Walmart. And then finally he says to me, "So I don't understand. if you already signed a contract and they're supposed to take all this stuff, what do you do every day? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what? But he didn't understand. And he really was. He was like, almost like, what? Like, why? This seems so straightforward. Like, well, what do you do here? Like, are you just a chimpanzee, or like? But he was, he wasn't trying to be insulting. He really didn't get it. And then I ran into him like 2 years later, and he was the key account for Sobeys, and he said to me, "Listen, I'm really sorry because I asked you that thing, and I was a complete ass. Like, I had no idea." And I just laugh because I think to everybody, like you talk about the complexity of running CPG from those sort of things where people go, I don't understand. You already have a contract. Like it should be easy, right? You ship it, they fulfill it, and it goes out the door. And you go, oh God, if only one of those three things worked the way it was supposed to, I'd be a happy guy, right? All the way to the complexity of like, holy shit, we like every day you've got to think about philosophically, is this the way we want to do it versus that way? Like I listen to you talk and I think like, really thankful. Like, Kenny and I met 6 years ago for real, really 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And we have similar sort of compatibilities like you and your brother, right? Like,
well, we're more like
really
brothers too, in a sense, right? I mean, it's like family.
Yeah. There are days, right? Like not
lots of days.
Not that long ago, I was like, listen, and he's like, and the two of us are like, like.
But just so you know, Cheryl, it's mostly Phil being mean to me. just so we're very clear.
Oh, it's because he's from the East. Although you guys never like
well,
that.
It must be because I don't know what it is. It just seems something in the water. I don't know.
Listen,
I mean, it's always a balance.
Too, so
it's always both sides. It's always both sides, and I mean that's why I say when you hit, like they say, most companies it's like 1 year. Most people thrown in the towel. CPG, it's very challenged to get 18 months to 2 years in. Most businesses, and that's kind of the thing. It's like if you don't find that's magic between another person in a sense,
really
to be able to push through, to be able to hear each other. And even when you're not hearing each other, to be able to say like, you're not hearing me, and like find a way to be heard to each other. And that might mean being more self-reflective. Like I can say that's a big part of too is, you're always questioning yourself too as staff. Like we haven't even talked about that, but right now, like the different, we're joking at the top about the different generations and technology, but all of those things add up. So the more people you bring into the business, it just creates a whole other layer of questioning, like, are we communicating clearly? Do we appear too aligned with each other? Are we bringing other people in? Do they feel, so that's why I said, when you guys have that ability to build for 6 years with each other, the same thing with Doug and I, even though we were like, we look back and we go, we could have done so many things so differently, but you can't. Like that's part of that learning curve.
Yeah.
And the one thing I actually really appreciated, it's really funny when we talk about it, is right now in our society, it's kind of that immediacy that we were talking about with even just being connected by a phone, is the immediacy that businesses just excel and exceed expectations. And they don't, like, they take years to build, and you do have to go through that trial and understanding phase. It's very few that just take off, but this unicorn idea really lingers over business and even investment in business. And it just doesn't happen that way. And when I worked at Best Buy, I was actually at an event, and one of the VPs, he said to me, "Oh, have you ever watched this video that we did?" And so we were watching the video, and he was explaining to me the history of the company. He said, "Did you know it only took Best Buy 30 years to figure out how to make money?" And I was like, "What?" And then so he was like telling me the history of the company, and it's like it was a one-off operation, and they started really building the company and finding their stride, and it becomes like one of the major retailers of North America. But that didn't happen overnight, and so it goes back to someone at the beginning had to struggle to build the business, to understand how to make it work, find the right people to work with, that they believe in it, and then continue to build it. And that is really the hardest part of really building a business, is if you don't have people that are supporting you, or you don't feel supported, you're doubting yourself, you're doubting the person that's building it with you, you're going to have a really hard journey, or else you won't have a journey at all.
I think you're right. And I think a large part of it is, when we go back to the beginning of this conversation, it's the immediacy of everything. First off, they're called unicorns because I don't see many unicorns.
No.
That's why it's called a unicorn. So when you use that word, like a lot of, they'll start with, you're thinking, by definition, there are no unicorns, right? They don't exist. So if we play with that wording, there's very few make it. And everybody thinks they're going to pop it out of the park in the first year. And to your point, you can grind for years before you find any success, if you find it. And that shouldn't deter you. It's just sort of built into it. You don't do it to be the unicorn. You do it because you're driven by something else. You had some health components that you wanted to help people with, or you just really like a product, or whatever. I don't care what your reasons are, but it's a tough industry when everybody, all they focuses on are the ones who pop it out of the park. And there's so few that even get to the plate. Never mind pop it out of the park.
Well, and
right?
and for me, like, being in vitamins and supplements, there's not a lot of companies
What a
that
tough
are
category. What a tough
They're
category.
tough category. And I knew that coming in. Like, so many people said right to me, you're going to fail. Like, even someone very close to me, like, they're like, this is stupid. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's going to fail, and you're just like,
somebody said that to you.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? This is not a cheerleader in my court. Like, then those are the things that people also don't realize, is you do lose friendships along the way, and people, because you realize, like, they're not there as your supporter. They don't see what your vision is, even if you don't achieve it. If you keep people in your circle that, they're like, stay to the safe side, like you're in a safe place. Like, it's like, yeah, but that's not where I want to be. I want to be in a different place right now. So you need to rally those people around you. You need to have that self-belief in yourself. Even on the days you hit low, you have to say, okay, bring yourself back up. What does that look like? And it's very challenging. And within, I remember when I, raised some capital, not a lot, but we've raised about 2 million over the years to really support us in building the business inventory. I talk about the fact that to do with vitamins and supplements, you're looking at long lead times, like between 3 to 6 months for a product to be, done and ready to sale. So you've got to carry like hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory on top of everything as you continue to scale and build a business. And, it's one person I was talking to, and they were like, oh, maybe, interested in what you guys are doing. And, when do you think you'll hit Jameson's level? And I was like, Jameson, like, Jameson's like the biggest player in the market. Like, they're a global player, and you're asking an independent who's like just, building across Canada, like, when do you think you'll hit this? Like, one person said to me, oh, it'd be really exciting if you tripled your sales this year. That would be really cool. And I'm like, yeah, that would be really cool.
Yeah, sure, that'd be awesome.
But,
you have no idea how cool.
Are you investing? Are you, and that's one of the challenges, is you've really got to find people that are aligned with your vision, and they see what you're doing, and they also have patience in seeing what you're doing. Because even as a woman too, like, I remember when I heard Arlene Dickinson say this she was talking about raising capital in Canada. And then she said, and there's another strike out there, just in case you're not familiar with it. It's less than 6% of capital goes to females. So that number's dropped even lower over the pandemic. We're at like less than 4% to female led companies. We really need to change that. I talked about that in Save Our Supplements, and the fact that I was really rallying women and the retailers and so forth, because I'm like, 80%, almost 80% of the buying power is women. And that's really where investment also needs to come into these type of commerce businesses, because we see what can be. We see what the demands are in the marketplace. And it's another challenge in self-doubt when people are kind of like, when you're talking with them, saying, well, what do you think it's going to take you to get to this? But they're using the most ridiculous, in a sense, of examples. And that happens over and over and over to me, where people just talk about the biggest of the biggest. And it's like, they didn't become the biggest of the biggest in 1 or 2 years.
Like Jameson,
the
80 years. They're 1922.
exactly. Like, yeah, 1922.
1922. They're 101 years old. It took them 80 years to get to any big size. It didn't happen overnight.
Why?
Yeah.
How come?
So
Sorry. So
that's
so
one
that's
of
the thing that sticks with me. Like, why would we? During the pandemic, we decided that women founders were worth less. Like, what? How is that possible that we just didn't at least try and keep up what we were? Because I feel like in that podcast, I feel like we talked to more.
Oh my God, we are so heavily skewed.
That like and a large like that found a lot of success during the pandemic. That it kind of surprises me that we didn't.
I don't know.
Sorry,
I
didn't mean to cut you off. It just surprises me. It surprises me a lot because I don't quite understand, how that can be.
Yeah, and I think that's a big call out. Like, if for anyone who's really looking at investors, how do we change the game in consumer goods or even retail experience? Well, like I say, the majority of the sales are going through females. A lot of stars are women, and like you look at this Commerce Life, a lot of the podcasts. When I looked at who's been on your show, I've met many of them. The struggles are very similar, and we talk about that. It's a very hard journey to get out there, and also it's you're kind of you're also being questioned, like, about the why are you doing that? Do you think you're going to stick with it? I remember someone saying that to me once. Do you think you're going to stick with it? Well, yeah, like, why I'm sitting in front of you. So the reality is we do need to get people into the mindset that these are actually the brands that could really potentially prove to be some of the most valuable brands in the long term, if they have the right capitalization. And there's a women's in naturals breakfast that was started by again 2 entrepreneurs, Catherine Herringer, who's Maple Magazine and The Naturalist, and also Analia Krebs, who's Social Nature.
Yeah.
And, they have a breakfast about that, and it was just women in the room. And the vulnerability about talking about that. And so many people are like, my business is going to go under because I can't inventory, or does anyone know how I can raise capital? Does anyone know investors who are interested in investing in women-based businesses? So, you're sitting in a room and you're like, yes, I understand that 100%. And so it's really an area that we can focus. And I've talked with so many women. They're like, how do we raise capital? Like, how do we support other women in that when you start to raise capital? And it goes back to, again, it's something you haven't done for most people before. You have to put it out there, and then you're sitting in conversations with these, can you triple sales this year? But here it's only going to be this amount of money. It's like, well, and then you look at your counterparts who are getting much larger investments. And you kind of question the why, because you've kind of got a proven model in place. You have, you've shown that there's a lifetime value to your customer. And so, I really hope that changes. And why it fell backwards during the pandemic, I can't say, other than people seem very nice about investing and potentially return to the roots. But 96% of capital not going to women-led businesses does not make sense in our society.
Because it doesn't make sense in anything, though, right? I mean, if you really think of it, none of it should, I mean, it sounds naive and probably silly, but none of it should really be based on a gender or an ethnicity or anything. It doesn't really matter. If you're getting questions, are you going to triple your business? Everybody should be getting that question. And if none of you can answer that, then none of you should get money. Whether you're pink from Mars, I don't really care. If that's the goal, that's the standard question, then that's how it plays. It shouldn't matter on anything. If the business plan is a business plan and it's solid, that's all it takes. And if nobody has a solid one, nobody gets money. And if they're really solid, you get money. It really shouldn't matter. Obviously it does. I'm I'm not being stupid here. I get it. I don't think I just don't understand it, I guess is what I always come back to. Because I don't understand why it would matter. Is the idea is a good idea and it plays, it plays. That's it.
Well, it'd be a great show or a great podcast for you guys to bring on investors into this
But
area.
nobody's going to answer it honestly, though, I don't think, Cheryl. That's the problem, because
Yeah.
how could you answer that if you're on the other side? Like, what would you say?
Well, I think that's part of it, is having those conversations. It's what the getting people to think about the why.
I guess
But
so.
yeah, it needs to, and that's part of changing it. And my brother and I have said that too. Like, we were sitting at a dinner event one night, and I was saying to him, "Do you see this and that?" I don't see it until you show me or talk about it, and then
Exactly.
it's so obvious. And it's like, how do you not see that? And I'm like, because it's having that balance of the conversation, and that people can feel safe in the conversation
Yeah.
to go back and change their view, right? So it's like, for me, when people meet with me, they're like, "Oh, really surprised, like, you really understand the business, you've been building the business and so forth." And it is reaching, it's kind of like that same thing what I talked about, 20 plus calls to Whole
Yeah.
Foods. It's kind of that same thing, is you've got to internally say, I'm going to continue doing this, but it's very challenging. And so
Mm.
again, someone's just trying to get their brand up, get moving, they have a degree of success. Now they need to do some kind of funding or financing. The first thing they're going to do is go to a bank, and then they're like, "Okay, there's a 9% interest rate and you have to put everything you've earned to date on the line."
Yeah.
And so a lot of people go there and then they go, "I can't do this," and they sell out their business, or let it
Yeah.
collapse, or try and bootstrap it even longer. And that's where I go, well, if we had this investment into a lot of these businesses, concepts, etc., where could these businesses be? Because they appeal to women. I think they're very well thought through. I've seen so many that, I've watched in the last over a few years, especially, collapse. And I'm just like, it's too bad,
Yeah.
because they really had something there. And so, I talk a lot about, obviously, vitality supplements. Actually, I think, when we talked on the Save Our Supplements campaign, I talked quite a bit about vitality and that story of, what it meant to me to see changing people's lives and so forth. But it's
Yeah.
like, you can't bring that greater level without the financial support. And so funding is a big area that is not something that people talk about, but I think it's so necessary in the commerce space to really grow brands that have potential, and really say, these are potential leaders of our industry, and
Yeah.
we invest in them,
Mm.
and those advocates to invest in them as well.
And it's critical, because you can't do without it. And again, so if there's an investors listing, it really, as long as the story in front of you has credibility and viability, it shouldn't matter anything past that. I mean, I've heard a lot of men pitch shitty ideas. Shouldn't be funded ever by anybody. And whether they were or weren't, and you've heard the opposite, you've heard the same on women's side, and they shouldn't be funded either.
Yeah.
And you've heard it on any side, and in the going ethnicity, and none of them should be funded. And yet there's so many that you hear back later, thought, wow, I wonder why nobody bought into that, because that was actually a pretty cool idea.
Yeah.
Or seemed to have legs. Like, was thought out well enough. There was odds that it should have worked.
Yeah. And that's the kind of, those are the things that kind of motivate you and drive you to talk about that. And that's why I said, it's a big part of consumer goods is around that. And actually, that's kind of one of the things I'm always interested. I'm like, there's not a lot of discussions, and I know there's actually a lot of retailers out there too who struggle in different ways, and they have concepts and brands and so forth. But I think it's very important that anyone listening, like, invest in the up and comers, not
agree.
just the groups. And I think this has been a really hard market the last couple of years since the pandemic.
Yeah.
To see that these times are when brands can really emerge. And I'd love to see some of the brands that I've been seeing really, really start to gain traction. Like, that would be, that would be fantastic. But again, it all comes with a cost. And so capital raising is actually a big part of this life. And as I've moved along the stage, bootstrapping to gaining traction, certain retailers, it's like, how do you get to that next level? And so again, that confidence of now understanding what's for the business, you now move into that next stage. And so now you're in a new level of discomfort, because you have to step out of the comfort to move to the next level if that's what you want to do. And so that's why I say within, an entrepreneurial space, you always have to be constantly pushing yourself and questioning, what's working, what's not working, and then finding what's the next stage for you. And that's kind of where we are right now within our business, as well as we hit our 10-year mark of Doug and I working on building this business together.
Well, it's great to see you keep plugging and keep trying. And if there's things that we can help with, even on our little world or a little platform here, please don't be scared to ask us. Or if you know of investors that you think would make sense to have on, invite them. Like, you can invite them on our behalf, because I think a lot of times Phil and I are always trying to figure it out too. I mean, we have daughters too, and I don't want them to be disadvantaged because they're daughters. That doesn't make any sense. If they're qualified and good, they should have the same shot as the sons. Or whatever you want.
Well, we want it all, right?
No, I mean, it shouldn't make any difference. If it's a good idea, well thought out, well planned, it should be getting help. That's it.
You get a fair shot at everything, right?
Just give me a fair crack. That's it.
Not naive to think that, like the world works like that.
No, we're not stupid. I mean, I understand how this world works, and I understand the advantages of I've had because of what I am. I get it. But it doesn't mean I can't try to understand.
But we can change
isn't getting it,
right? We should be able to change some of that. That's why
you'd hope. Come on, seriously. Anyway, there
is not enough time to talk to you.
We never have enough time to actually.
No, it is not enough time.
I'm like, we always end our hour too fast, but I think. I think there were some good messages along there. I think the number one when we started off is actually true. It goes back to all of it, is how do you manage time and where do you put your priorities? And I think when you're running a business, that's your most valuable thing, is your time and your priorities. So, that we started talking actually quite a distance about it at the beginning. But I mean, no matter what it is, it always comes back to those things in business, is, your time, your priorities, and building those relationships. So, I mean, we kind of went through a lot of different things we talked about today, but they all kind of wind back into those three areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they really do.
I think they really do.
Anyway,
thank you
always a treat.
So much for doing this.
Thank you.
This is really amazing.
Yeah.
Always appreciate the time together. We'll have to set up a round 3 sometime down the road.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'd love to.
You're in.
Yeah, I'd love to.
It'll be when I surprise Phil. He won't know who's coming behind.
Good Lord. Barely know what you do. Still don't know really what you look like. You're going to change your appearance. It'll be fantastic.
It's all good, man.
Yeah.
It'll be the running joke for the next 10 years. We'll never be able to meet in person.
I think so.
Exactly.
So,
anyway.
Well, awesome.
Well, you go enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Phil, you hang on. Cheryl, thank you once again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Take care, guys.
Okay,
you
care.
too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
That was awesome. Seriously, not enough time.
No, I always feel I think that's the second time we've talked to her. I kind of felt, okay, fuck, we still didn't finish it.
Nope, we didn't finish.
No.
Nope. Did not finish, but it's okay. I like it. It really does mean we're gonna have to bring her back, right? And that's okay.
And I think I'd like to try to find, I mean, I guess I don't want people to think we're idiots and we got our heads up our asses. I get that there's a definitive, man walks in, woman walks in room, ethnicities walk room. There's all these biases set up. I'm still trying to understand, maybe, I don't know why it is, or how do we fix it? Like, what is, how, trying to figure out what's to go forward. How do you push this?
Kenny, I think this industry just surprises me all the time. Like, I'm always surprised that we're not there yet. Like, I don't know.
I don't know what it is.
Why we're not, right? I don't know why we're not. Like, I just don't. I don't think I understand it. But
no, I don't think I quite understand it either. And maybe just, I don't know. Maybe we're just not that bright.
Well, no, we aren't that bright. We're the knuckleheads, right? But there are some things that I feel like we should just sort of understand. I don't think it should be that hard, but
no, it should be right. It just makes sense. But anyway,
Anyway,
Okay.
this is really long. We're going to go. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you for listening, everybody.